Welcome back to Cashflow Lab. If you've ever, tried to write or update your resume, you absolutely know the frustration, all this subjective advice flying around.
Oh, completely. It's maddening. One person says one thing, the next says the total opposite.
Exactly. Like, use a functional layout. No. Wait, only chronological gets past the screening.
Right. Or you must have an objective statement.
And then the next article says, nope, that's going straight into the bin. It's a mess.
Yeah, it creates so much unnecessary anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because the rules feel so arbitrary, almost personal sometimes.
they really do.
And that's exactly why we're so excited about the source material we're diving into today. We're actually moving past all that opinion.
Finally.
We're looking at the data, at statistical fact.
Yeah.
What does the evidence tell us really works?
Okay, let's unpack this because this is solid ground. We're basing this whole discussion on findings from a massive study. Austin Bellac and his team looked at, get this, 125,340 resumes.
Wow. That's a serious data set, not just a handful of opinions.
Not at all. The whole point was to find out, what specific measurable things correlated with getting more interviews, more callbacks. This isn't theory. This is the data showing what recruiters and, yes, the infamous applicant tracking systems, the ATS, are actually prioritizing.
And this is so crucial. Because look, this data confirms some basic best practices, things we've kind of suspected, but it also really highlights 5, let's call them non-negotiable aspects, things related to structure, content, that candidates are just missing again and again.
Setting themselves up for failure unnecessarily.
Precisely. So the goal of this deep dive today is to give you 5 core data-backed principles. Think of it as a shortcut, right? A way to make sure your resume is built on a solid foundation that, statistically speaking, puts you ahead of most of the competition.
5 golden rules, basically. Backed by data, not opinion. And the promise is, if you nail these, you should see an immediate improvement in your resume's performance. That's what the numbers suggest. So we're going to cover why you need a good LinkedIn profile linked, how to really optimize for the keywords they're actually looking for, proving your value with hard numbers metrics, why keeping it concise, that word count, is so critical, and finally, ruthlessly cutting out all that fluff.
Sounds like a plan. And let's start with something that seems super basic contact info, but where the data actually reveals a pretty critical statistical pitfall. I'm talking about the power of that LinkedIn profile link.
Right, so LinkedIn. Let's look at the raw stats here first. The finding seems crystal clear across all those resumes. Documents that included a working LinkedIn profile link, they saw statistically higher interview rates.
Yeah, that seems like it should be a complete no-brainer, doesn't it? You want to give the recruiter every possible chance to see more, to verify your experience. More context is better, right?
You'd think providing more ways for them to see how great you are would be standard procedure.
But here's the kicker, the really astonishing gap the study found. Only 48% of the resumes they analyzed even bothered to include a link to a LinkedIn profile.
Wait, only 48%, so less than half.
Less than half. That means over 50% of candidates are just leaving this immediate statistical advantage on the table. They're skipping a 2-second copy-paste action that could help them.
That is genuinely mind-boggling. If the data clearly shows it helps get interviews, why do you think more than half of people just don't do it? Is it just forgetting, or is there some reason they might leave it out on purpose?
Well, it's probably a mix of things, Some people might still have slightly outdated ideas about professional privacy online. Maybe they don't want recruiters poking around.
Okay, I could see that.
Others might just plain forget. They're so focused on getting the resume document perfect, the link slips their mind. But the bottom line, according to the data, is that 52% of candidates are basically telling the recruiter, look, this one page is all you get.
While the other half are saying, hey, here's a whole online portfolio, more evidence, recommendations.
Exactly. It's a missed opportunity. But, and this is crucial, the story doesn't stop there. Because this is where the data gets really interesting, really nuanced, and honestly, a little bit shocking.
Okay.
It's not just about having any link on there. It's about having a good link. A link to a profile that's actually filled out.
So the quality of the profile matters, not just the presence of the URL.
Immensely. And here's the data shock. The study found that having a link to a bare bones profile, one that's basically empty or hasn't been updated in ages, that actually decreases your chances of getting a callback compared to if you just left the link off entirely.
Whoa, hang on. So linking to a weak profile is worse than having no link at all?
Statistically speaking, yes. Think about that. It's like you're drawing attention to the fact that you started something and didn't finish it, or that you don't maintain your professional presence online.
That seems counterintuitive. like a penalty for even trying. But okay, let's unpack the recruiter's perspective. Why would seeing an empty profile raise a bigger red flag than just not seeing a link if the resume itself looks good?
Well, I think it boils down to trust and consistency, right?
Yeah.
A recruiter clicks that link. They're hoping to see confirmation of what's on the resume, maybe some deeper details on projects, maybe some recommendations that back up your claims.
Okay, makes sense. Verification.
Exactly. And if they click through and find, well, basically nothing. A blank page, no recent activity, maybe not even a current job title listed correctly. It instantly suggests a lack of follow-through. Or maybe, and this is worse, it makes them wonder if you're maybe exaggerating things on the resume itself.
It creates doubt.
It creates doubt. An empty profile reads as a failure to maintain your professional presence. It signals maybe a lack of investment in your career or just not being digitally savvy. Whereas if the link is just missing entirely, a recruiter might just assume, okay, maybe this person's a bit older, maybe they just don't use LinkedIn much. That's less damaging than actively showing them you have it but you neglect it.
Got it. So if we accept the data, and it seems compelling, that a comprehensive profile is what you need, what actually defines comprehensive versus bare bones based on the findings? What are the key things that make a profile successful?
Yeah, the study pointed to three main pillars, really. First, just the basic professional look and feel. You need a decent professional headshot, not a selfie from vacation. And a well-designed banner image, maybe something related to your industry. It signals professionalism, attention to detail.
Right, the visual first impression.
Second, the content itself. Those work sections, your experience descriptions, they need to be informative, detailed. They should basically mirror the best parts of your resume, maybe even expand on them a little. Think of it like your online portfolio.
So not just titles and dates, actual substance.
Absolutely. And third, this is something often overlooked, especially by folks earlier in their careers, the profile needs to show some effort in building meaningful professional connections, maybe some endorsements, some recommendations. It shows you're actually engaged in your field, not just passively existing online.
Okay, professional look, detailed content, and engagement.
Yeah.
Got it. And just a quick practical tip here for everyone listening. Something small, but it makes a difference on the resume itself. If you are putting that LinkedIn URL on there, make sure you customize it. Get rid of that long string of random numbers and letters LinkedIn gives you by default. Create that custom URL with your name. It just looks so much cleaner, more professional.
Oh, totally agree. It's a small detail, but it signals you pay attention to presentation.
Good point.
It's those little things.
It really is. Now, we should also connect this back to where someone is in their career, because the study found a pretty powerful trend related to job level.
Right, I saw that. It seemed like as the job level went up, so moving from entry level towards senior or executive roles, the difference in callback rates between people with weak profiles versus strong profiles actually got smaller.
Exactly. The benefit of having that really polished LinkedIn profile became, let's say, less pronounced at the very top, like CEO or VP level.
Why would that be? Well, the implication here is pretty profound, especially for anyone just starting out or in the early stages of their career. A strong, comprehensive LinkedIn profile is disproportionately more important for entry-level and early career folks compared to their senior colleagues.
Okay, why the difference?
Think about it. A CEO or a senior VP, they often have a track record that's already pretty well established, maybe easily verified through company history, press releases, reputation, Their credibility is built over years.
Sure, they have a longer history to point to.
But an entry-level applicant,
Right.
someone with just a few years' experience, they need every single piece of supporting evidence they can muster to build that trust, to demonstrate they're reliable, professional, and LinkedIn. That's often their main, easily accessible tool for that crucial verification step. Recruiters are definitely checking for newer candidates.
So the takeaway is, if you're earlier in your career, getting that LinkedIn profile from just existing to excellent isn't just nice to have, it's maybe one of the most critical things you can do off the resume to bridge that credibility gap.
Absolutely. The data shows it provides an immediate, almost essential competitive advantage for that group. It's foundational.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about something everyone loves to hate. The applicant tracking systems, the ATS. Because, like it or not, this is where the cold, hard mechanics of resume filtering often begin.
Yeah, the necessary evil, right? Everyone groans about it because it feels so impersonal, like you're writing for a robot.
Which you kind of are initially.
You really are at first.
Yeah.
And the reality is That ATS scan for specific keywords, that's the first gatekeeper for a lot of jobs, especially larger companies. The system is literally designed to filter out applicants the company deems low potential before a human being even lays eyes on the resume.
Saving the recruiter time, but potentially filtering out good people.
Exactly. And if you don't speak the ATS's language, if you're not using the specific terminology that's in the job description, your resume might just end up in the virtual no pile, no matter how amazing your actual experience is.
And the data from this study really highlights a huge disconnect here, doesn't it? A massive mismatch between what the job description is asking for and what candidates are actually putting on their resumes.
It's pretty stark. The study found that the average job description they analyzed contained about 43 essential keywords. These cover things like required hard skills, specific types of experience, tools, and even, importantly, soft skills or competencies.
43 keywords on average.
Okay. But here's the failure rate, the average candidate. They only matched about 51% of those keywords on their resume.
Only half?
Yep. Meaning they only included roughly 20 or 21 of the relevant keywords when the job description clearly listed out 43 things they were looking for. It suggests a huge failure to customize the resume for the specific role.
Wow. So they're basically disqualifying themselves right at the start just by not tailoring the language?
Pretty much. They're getting filtered out before
Yeah.
they even get a chance, often not because they lack the skill, but because they described it using different words than the company used in the posting.
Okay, so it's clear just guessing or using generic terms isn't working for, well, about half the candidates out there. What's the practical fix? How do you figure out exactly what keywords the ATS and the hiring manager are looking for?
Well, thankfully, the solution is pretty direct and mechanical, really. You can leverage tools that are readily available, often for free online. The strategy is to use a word cloud generator.
Ah, okay. Like those tools where bigger words mean they appear more often.
Exactly that. It's simple, super efficient, and genuinely effective. You just copy the entire text of the job description you're interested in, paste it into the word cloud tool, and hit generate.
And visually, it will just pop out the most frequent terms.
Instantly. The words that appear largest or most prominently, those are almost certainly your most critical keywords, the core skills and requirements you absolutely need to make sure are reflected on your resume.
And the key then becomes integrating those exact keywords using their precise phrasing naturally into your resume text, right? Not just stuffing them in a list at the bottom.
Absolutely naturally. If they say project management, you use project management. If they say client relationship building, you use that phrase. The ATS is very literal. It's looking for exact matches. So you need to mirror their language.
Okay, customize using their words. But let's dig a bit deeper. Which keywords are people missing most often? Because the study showed a really interesting split here.
Yeah, this is where the disparity gets, well, pretty damning, actually. The data showed candidates were, reasonably okay at including the hard skills.
Like technical skills?
Right. Things like Excel, Python, SQL, specific software certifications. Candidates included about 60% of the necessary hard skills mentioned in the job descriptions. Not perfect, but okay.
60% for hard skills. So where's the big drop-off?
Soft skills. Candidates only included, on average, 28% of the necessary soft skills that were relevant to the target role.
28%. Wow, that's abysmal compared to 60% for hard skills. Why such a massive difference?
Well, think about it. Hard skills are concrete. They're easy to list. They fit nicely into that dedicated skills section often found at the bottom of a resume. They feel objective, verifiable.
Right, you can list proficient in Salesforce. Easy.
Exactly. The challenge, and likely the reason for that terrible 28% score, is integrating the soft skills. Things like leadership, communication, problem-solving, collaboration, resilience. These are often overlooked by applicants because maybe they don't seem like real job duties, or they feel harder to prove, more vague.
But hiring managers care intensely about them, right? Especially for roles that aren't purely technical.
Oh, absolutely. They demand them, especially in roles requiring teamwork, client interaction, strategic thinking. Candidates undervalue them or don't know how to showcase them, but companies are screening for them.
So the implication here is if the job description says over and over again that they need someone with strong organizational skills or proven collaborative abilities, just sticking those words in a soft skills list probably isn't cutting it.
Definitely not for the human reader, and maybe not even for some smarter ATS systems. You really need to demonstrate those soft skills within the descriptions of your actual work experience. Weave them into the bullet points.
Show, don't just tell.
Precisely. They need to be backed up by an action or a result. So for listeners thinking, okay, how do I get better at this? An actionable tip is, yes, absolutely analyze the job description with that word cloud, but maybe also look beyond that. Consult some industry resources like, those big annual workplace trends reports.
Yeah, the ones that list the most in-demand skills.
Exactly. Identify maybe the top 5 or 10 in-demand soft skills right now, things like adaptability, emotional intelligence, whatever they might be. Then consciously make sure you're incorporating examples of those traits into the bullet points describing your accomplishments. Show how you collaborated. Don't just say you're a collaborator.
Right. It's the difference between saying leadership skills and providing a bullet point like, led a team of 5 to launch the new product ahead of schedule and 10% under budget. The second one proves it.
Exactly. That second one speaks the language of the ATS by potentially including the keyword led, and it speaks the language of the human reader by providing that crucial context and proof.
Okay, moving on to rule number 3 in this one. Well, it's probably the single most common piece of resume advice you hear everywhere. Quantify your achievements. Use numbers. Use metrics.
It's classic advice, isn't it? Everyone nods along when they hear it.
Everyone nods, yes. Yet the data from this huge study shows it's still the area where candidates fail most dramatically. It's like advice everyone knows they should follow, but very few actually do it consistently or effectively.
The metrics deficiency is absolutely real. The numbers bear it out. The study found that only 26% of the resumes they analyzed included 5 or more instances of measurable metrics.
Only about a quarter.
Only a quarter used quantification significantly. And maybe even more worrying, 36%, that's more than a third, didn't include a single quantifiable result. Not one. 0.
Wow. Over a third had no numbers at all to back up their claims. When you see numbers like that, it really confirms that people know they should quantify, but they're just not making the mental leap or maybe doing the work to figure out how.
It seems that way. It takes effort to dig up those numbers sometimes.
So why is it that companies and recruiters are so obsessed with metrics? What does putting a number on something provide that just describing it doesn't?
Well, fundamentally, metrics do 2 things brilliantly. They eliminate ambiguity, and they create instant comparability. They make the value you provided in the past instantly understandable and, crucially, projectable onto the value you might provide in the future.
Makes it concrete.
Totally concrete. Imagine you're a recruiter reading 10 resumes, and all 10 say something like, responsible for planning and executing social media campaigns. Okay, great. But how do you tell who was actually good at it? It's impossible to distinguish performance. They all sound the same.
Just 10 generic job descriptions, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you see that 11th candidate whose resume says, my social media campaigns drove a 30% year-over-year increase in attributable sales revenue. Or maybe grew organic follower count by 15,000 in 6 months, leading to a 20% rise in website traffic.
Ah, okay. Night and day difference. The quantified result just leaps off the page.
It leaps off the page. It speaks the language businesses understand: results, impact, ROI. It translates your day-to-day work into demonstrable, undeniable value. That's why they demand it.
All right, so we know why it's important, but let's get super practical for listeners who are maybe struggling with the how. How do you actually structure these bullet points to force yourself to include metrics? You mentioned a formula.
Yeah, there's a really effective structure, often called the XYZ formula, though people use different names for it. But the core idea is to structure your bullet points to include 3 key elements every single time. It forces you to think about the result and the measurement.
Okay, let's break down XYZ again slowly, because if people can just memorize and apply this structure, they'll immediately be way ahead of that 36% who use 0 metrics. What are X, Y, and Z?
Okay, so it's accomplished X, which is the result or the outcome you achieved, as measured by Y, that's your metric, the number, the percentage, the tangible measurement, by doing Z, which is the specific action you took to get that result. X result, Y metric, Z action.
Result, metric, action. Got it. You have to include all 3.
You really should aim for all 3 in most bullet points. Let's try an example, maybe something not just sales-focused. How about someone in, say, product development or maybe marketing communications?
Okay.
So instead of just saying, manage the launch of a new newsletter a week.
Very weak. Tells me nothing about success.
Right. Now apply XYZ. Maybe something like,
right.
Drove 2,500 organic signups, result X, to our monthly newsletter within the first quarter, metric Y, time frame implies rate, representing a 43% quarter-on-quarter increase, metric Y, by A/B testing content layouts and collaborating with co-marketing partners, action Z.
Okay, wow. That is packed. You've got the results, signups, the metric, 2,500, 43% increase Q1, and the actions, A/B testing partnerships. It tells a complete story of accomplishment.
Exactly. It shows not just what you did, but how well you did it and how you did it. That's the power of that structure.
Now, I can already hear some listeners thinking, okay, that's great if you work in marketing or sales where numbers are easy, but my job doesn't directly impact revenue. I work on internal tools, or I'm in HR, or I do compliance. How do you quantify the supposedly unquantifiable?
That is such a common and important question. And there's absolutely a way. This is a key pro tip. For roles that don't directly touch external revenue or sales figures, you need to shift your focus. Quantify things like efficiency gains, productivity improvements, cost savings, risk reduction, time saved. These all translate to bottom line value for the company, even if indirectly.
So find the internal impact.
Find the internal impact and put a number on it. Let's take an HR training example. Instead of saying, redesign the employee onboarding process.
Okay, sounds important but vague.
Right. A quantified XYZ version could be, cut new employee onboarding time, result X, from 2 weeks down to 3 days, metric Y, resulting in a measured 70% faster time to productivity score, metric Y, for over 150 new hires annually, scale metric Y, by implementing a blended learning module and peer mentor system, action Z.
Nice. The metrics there are time saved and productivity gained. Super valuable.
Totally. Or maybe for someone in compliance or an internal audit role, instead of improved audit documentation practices.
Yeah.
Exactly. Streamlined audit documentation process, action Z, resulting in 0 critical compliance errors identified in the subsequent Q3 internal audit, result X metric Y, and contributing to an estimated cost avoidance of $150,000 in potential regulatory fines, result X metric Y.
You have to find that measurable impact, whether it's time, errors, risk, efficiency, user satisfaction on an internal tool. Every role impacts the business somehow. Your job is to find that number and showcase it, especially when you know a third of your competition isn't showing any numbers at all. All right, we've covered the crucial content, LinkedIn, keywords, metrics. Now let's talk about the container itself, the physical length of the resume, because this is another area where the data gives us a surprisingly specific target that most people are apparently missing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Goldilocks zone for resumes, isn't it? Not too short, not too long, but just right. And ignoring this specific range statistically puts you in the majority of resumes that are underperforming.
Okay, so what is this magic range, according to the analysis of those 125,000 plus documents?
The research pinpoints the ideal resume length as being between 475 and 600 words. That narrow band is the statistical sweet spot.
475 to 600 words. It's actually quite specific. And what was the impact of actually landing within that range?
The impact was huge. Resumes that fell within that sweet spot saw double the interviews compared to resumes that were outside the range, either significantly shorter or significantly longer.
Double the interviews, just by managing the word count.
Double. That is a massive statistical advantage you gain simply by adhering to a formatting constraint. It's kind of mind-blowing, really.
It really is. So why? Why would that specific range be so effective? What's happening psychologically or mechanically there?
Well, you have to think about the review process. We know recruiters spend, maybe 6 or 7 seconds on that initial scan?
Yeah, incredibly fast.
So a resume that's below 475 words,
Sure.
It usually just lacks the necessary detail. It probably doesn't have enough space for those crucial quantified achievements we just talked about, or enough relevant keywords to satisfy the ATS, or the human reader. It feels thin, maybe suggests lack of experience or effort.
Okay, too short equals not enough proof. Makes sense. What about too long? Over 600 words?
Over 600 words sends a different negative signal. It often suggests the candidate can't prioritize information. They haven't figured out what's most important to highlight. It forces the recruiter, in their tiny 7-second window, to wade through extra text, hunting for the key qualifications. It's inefficient.
So you're essentially making the recruiter work harder if it's too long, and they just don't have the time or patience for that. They penalize you for it.
That seems to be exactly what's happening. And here's the stat that shows how many people get this wrong. The study found that 77%, more than 3/4, of the resumes they analyzed fell outside this ideal 475 to 600 word range.
77%.
77% were either too short, lacking detail, or too long, likely rambling or failing to edit.
So wait, this means if you, the listener, simply make sure your resume lands squarely between 475 and 600 words, you are automatically, statistically, in a stronger position than roughly 3 out of 4 other candidates.
That's exactly what the data implies. Just by managing the length, you're already ahead of the majority who are failing on this basic formatting rule. Likely, as you said, because they're afraid of leaving something important out.
That fear of omission, it must be the biggest driver of overly long resumes. People think, oh, I have to include everything I ever did.
Right. More detail must be better. When the data clearly proves that concise, focused communication is exponentially more valuable in this context, brevity wins.
Now, we do need to address the elephant in the room here. What about people with, say, 20 or 30 years of experience? Or academics? Or people applying for federal jobs? Surely they can't fit everything into 600 words.
That's a really fair and important point. We need to acknowledge the exceptions. This 475 to 600 word rule applies to the vast majority of standard corporate job applications across most typical career paths.
But not universally.
Not universally, no. If you are a university professor applying for an academic post, you'll be writing a multi-page curriculum vitae, or CV, which is expected to be long and detailed. Same for certain high-level federal government roles that require incredibly specific, exhaustive documentation. And yes, sometimes very senior executives like C-level candidates with decades of board positions and publications might have a 2- or 3-page resume that goes well over 600 words, maybe even 1,500 plus.
Okay, so those are specific, documented exceptions where longer formats are the norm and expected by the reader.
Exactly. Those are established conventions for those specific paths. But for the typical professional, applying for roles from entry-level up through mid-level management, even senior management in many fields, that 475 to 600 word count constraint appears to be non-negotiable if you want to maximize your interview odds based on this data.
So for almost everyone listening, the message is aim for that sweet spot. If your resume is creeping up past 600 words, you need to start editing ruthlessly. Cut things that aren't directly relevant to the target job.
Precisely. And this finding really reinforces 2 key practical tips we've already touched on. First, it hammers home why you should not just stuff your resume with keywords.
Right, because that adds length without adding real value.
Exactly. The goal isn't keyword quantity. It's including the quality keywords, the ones that directly match the job description, prioritized and integrated naturally. Depth over bulk.
And the second practical tip, it sounds almost laughably basic, but given that 77% failure rate,
use the word count tool. Seriously. Whether you're using Microsoft Word, Google Docs, whatever, know what your word count is, keep an eye on it as you write and edit. Make absolutely sure you're landing within that 475 to 600 word window before you even think about hitting submit.
it's such an easy check, and the data says it's an instant performance booster. Pure statistical leverage.
Couldn't agree more. Simple, but apparently incredibly effective.
Okay, we've arrived at our 5th and final data-backed rule. This one is all about the quality of the words you use within that 475 to 600 word count. Specifically, it's about eliminating the fluff. You know, the clichés, the buzzwords, the stuff that recruiters often say is the absolute bane of their existence.
Oh, absolutely. They hate it. And for good reason. The core principle we need to hammer home here is that every single sentence on your resume should be actively selling your experience, ideally with that quantifiable evidence we talked about.
Not just summarizing it with generic, empty adjectives.
Exactly. Buzzwords and cliches are just unnecessary filler. They take away from your real message. And honestly, after a recruiter has scanned, say, 30 or 40 resumes in a row that all use the same tired phrases, it just triggers fatigue and, frankly, irritation.
Yeah, you have to imagine their perspective. They're on that tight time crunch, maybe only 7 seconds for the first pass. If those precious seconds are spent reading phrases that could apply to literally any candidate walking down the street,
you've completely wasted your shot. It's the total lack of specificity. The recruiter is desperately looking for unique value, for concrete actions, for measurable results. And when they read a phrase like, I don't know, results-oriented professional with a passion for excellence.
ugh, makes me cringe just hearing it.
Right. It's meaningless. The ATS probably ignores it, and the human reader just mentally checks out because it tells them nothing concrete. It actually forces them to do the work of interpreting what results-oriented or passion actually achieved in your past roles. You're not helping them.
And the data from the study confirms just how common this problem is, right? It's not just a few bad apples using fluff.
Not at all. It's widespread. The study showed that a shocking 51% so, more than half of all the resumes analyzed, included some form of buzzword, cliché, or even things like using incorrect pronouns like we instead of I.
51%. So again, like the length issue, if you simply clean up this fluff, you immediately place yourself in the top half of candidates, at least in terms of professional writing and clarity.
Instantly. It's another way to gain an edge just by avoiding common mistakes.
Okay, let's get specific then. What were some of the actual cliches and buzzwords mentioned in the source material that people need to hunt down and eliminate from their resumes right now? The phrases that are actively annoying recruiters and just wasting valuable space.
Yeah, they highlighted several common offenders. Things like super motivated by our passions. As we said, generic corporate speak nobody buys. Or variations of detail-oriented team player.
The class.
The absolute classic. It's redundant. Aren't most professionals supposed to be detail-oriented and team players? It's overused to the point of meaninglessness. And it's impossible to prove without metrics anyway.
Right. Show me you're detail-oriented with the result. Don't just state it.
Exactly. Other examples, we're talking vaguely about having creative mindsets or using corporate jargon, like talking about creating synergies between departments or products. These words just dilute your actual accomplishments because they sound like you're trying too hard to sound important rather than just stating facts.
And thinking back to our word count rule, section 4, every single word has to earn its place in that 475-600 limit. Using, say, 4 words like detail-oriented team player when you could be using those words to strengthen a specific quantified achievement using the XYZ formula, that's just a massive failure in efficiency.
It's a terrible use of prime real estate. The goal should always be to replace that fluff with power verbs and specific actions linked to results. So instead of claiming you're highly organized, you provide a metric showing how you organize something, maybe a project, an event, a system that led to a measurable positive outcome, like a 20% faster turnaround time or reduce errors.
Show the organization through the result.
Always. So for the listener who's thinking, okay, I probably have some of this fluff in my resume, how do I fix it? There's a really simple but effective mechanical tip.
What's that?
Go online and just Google common resume cliches and buzzwords. You'll find tons of lists. Print one out, then go through your current resume draft line by line and be ruthless. Systematically search for and destroy every single one of those fluff phrases you find.
Hunt them down and replace them.
Replace them with strong action verbs, specific details, and those all-important quantifiable metrics we discussed in Section 3. Ask yourself for every phrase, does this help sell my unique experience? Does it provide measurable proof of my skills? If the answer is no, it has to go.
That shift in mindset from just summarizing yourself with adjectives to actively selling yourself with verbs and numbers seems like the final crucial piece of this whole data-driven resume puzzle.
I think it really is. It ties everything together. Hashtag tag outro.
So what does this all boil down to? We started this deep dive for Cashflow Lab looking for solid data, trying to get away from all the conflicting subjective advice on resumes.
And the data delivered.
It really did. We found 5 basically non-negotiable foundations for building a resume that statistically performs better based on that massive analysis of over 125,000 documents. Let's recap them real quick.
It sounds good.
1, include a link to a comprehensive LinkedIn profile. An empty one hurts you. 2, optimize relentlessly for the specific keywords found in the job description, especially those soft skills.
3, quantify your achievements using metrics whenever possible. Aim for at least 5 instances. Use that XYZ formula. 4, keep the length tight, strictly within that 475 to 600 word sweet spot.
And 5, eliminate all the fluff, the cliches, the buzzwords. Sell, don't just summarize.
Exactly. And the key thing to remember is these aren't just, our opinions or some fleeting trends. These are fundamental structural tweaks proven by data to maximize your chances of getting past those initial screens, both the HES robots and the quick human glance.
They help focus the reader's attention immediately on your actual value proposition?
Right. The numbers behind these findings should really convince you, the listener, that making these adjustments isn't just optional. It's pretty essential if you want that statistical edge.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you just nail these 5 fundamentals, you're already potentially ahead of the 77% getting the length wrong, the 51% using fluff, the 36% using zero metrics. It's about avoiding the common pitfalls.
These are incredibly high leverage fixes. Small changes, potentially massive statistical payoff in terms of getting more interviews.
For sure.
And, that leads us to maybe one final provocative thought for listeners to chew on, building on what might be the single biggest deficit we saw in the data. That soft skills gap. Remember, candidates only included 28% of the required soft skills. That's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, a massive failure rate that's likely costing tons of otherwise qualified people their shot.
It really raises a critical question for you to think about as you revise your resume. If just listing soft skills like leadership or communication isn't working, and using buzzwords like team player is actively hurting you, then how should you be communicating these absolutely essential traits?
Hmm. Well, based on everything we've discussed, particularly the metrics section, it seems the only viable path forward is to weave those soft skills directly into the quantifiable achievements, right? Using that XYZ structure.
That seems to be the most powerful way, doesn't it? You don't just claim the soft skill, you demonstrate it through a measurable result it helped produce.
So instead of just saying strong leadership skills,
You'd have a bullet point like, led a cross-functional team of 8, Action Z demonstrating leadership, to deliver Project Alpha 2 weeks ahead of schedule, result X, resulting in a 15% cost saving, metric Y. The leadership is implied and proven by the outcome.
or for communication, maybe something like presented technical findings to non-technical executives, Action Z demonstrating communication, leading to a 90% approval rate for the proposed $500 K budget, result X metric Y.
Exactly. You're demonstrating your soft skills through the tangible, quantified results they enabled. Turning those intangible qualities like leadership, communication, collaboration, problem solving into measurable proof of value. That, I think, is the deeper challenge and the biggest opportunity for listeners implementing these data-backed rules. It requires more thought than just making a list, but the payoff could be huge.
A fantastic point to end on. You've got to connect the dots for them.
Make it undeniable.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for tuning into Cashflow Lab. If you found these data-driven resume tips helpful, please make sure to subscribe, maybe leave us a comment with your biggest takeaway, and share this with anyone you know who's navigating the job market.
Yeah, spread the word.
Remember, a smart, data-driven resume focused on these core principles really can open doors much faster than relying on generic advice or guesswork. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Cashflow Lab.